The courtroom was silent, heavy with tension, as the wooden gavel echoed across the chamber. All eyes shifted toward Senator John Kennedy, who sat calmly at the defense table, his hands folded neatly, his gaze steady. He was known for his sharp wit, his folksy humor, and his uncompromising stand for truth, but today, he wasn't on the Senate floor. Today, he was in a federal courtroom, facing not only a legal battle but also a personal trial against his own integrity. The opposing side had spent weeks building their case, portraying Kennedy as unfit, unqualified, and even ignorant of the law he had so passionately defended for years. At the heart of it all was a liberal judge, notorious for his bias and condescending tone, who made no attempt to hide his disdain for Kennedy. From the very first hearing, the judge had mocked him openly, sneering at his arguments. And in one particularly humiliating moment, leaning forward and saying, "Mr. Kennedy, for all your years in politics, you remain shockingly ignorant of the law." The words cut through the courtroom like a blade. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, and whispers spread like wildfire. Some smirked, others winced, but Kennedy remained calm. He didn't lash back, didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the judge with quiet conviction and said, "Ignorance, Your Honor, is pretending that truth doesn't matter. I won't do that." Those words were barely noticed at the time, but they would soon echo far beyond the courtroom. For days, Kennedy endured the ridicule. Headlines blared with phrases like "Judge humiliates," "Kennedy and Senator exposed." In court, on social media, critics piled on, mocking his southern drawl and his down-to-earth mannerisms, painting him as outdated, even foolish. Yet Kennedy's supporters, though shaken, stood by him. They knew him not as a man of ignorance, but as a man of grit, one who had built his career on standing up to powerful voices when no one else dared. The trial itself was about more than just Kennedy. It was about a policy he had fought for, one designed to protect the rights of working-class families who had long been ignored by Washington elites. The opposition, with powerful donors and corporate interests on their side, wanted it crushed. To them, Kennedy wasn't just an obstacle. He was a symbol of defiance that had to be discredited. Every day in court was a battle. Witnesses testified against him, lawyers attempted to twist his words, and the judge repeatedly cut him off mid-sentence. But Kennedy never wavered. Instead, he relied on something deeper than political strategy. He relied on the truth. He brought forth families who had been directly helped by his policies. He listened to their tears, their struggles, and their hopes. And then he gave them the floor. "Let them speak," he told the courtroom. "The truth isn't in my voice, sits in theirs." The judge sighed impatiently, rolling his eyes. But the testimonies couldn't be ignored. One by one, mothers, veterans, and small business owners stood and told their stories. The courtroom, once filled with scorn, began to shift. Even reporters started writing a different kind of headline. The narrative of ignorance was being replaced with one of heart, courage, and resilience. As the days turned into weeks, the tension grew unbearable. Finally, the time came for the verdict. The courtroom was packed to the brim. Politicians, journalists, and everyday citizens all crowded in, waiting to see whether Kennedy's fight would end in humiliation or triumph. The judge, with his usual air of superiority, cleared his throat and began to read. There was a pause, heavy and deliberate. Before the words fell like thunder, "This court rules in favor of Senator John Kennedy." For a moment, the room froze. Then it erupted. Gasps filled the air, followed by cheers from the families who had supported him. Kennedy himself remained composed, his hands still folded, his face calm, but his eyes glistened. The very judge who had mocked him, belittled him, and called him ignorant was now forced to acknowledge his victory. The irony was not lost on anyone. As Kennedy stood, he didn't gloat. He didn't sneer back at the judge. Instead, he turned to the courtroom, his voice steady, and said, "This was never about me. This was about truth. And the truth, no matter how much you mock it, will always stand." The words carried beyond the courthouse steps, spreading through news outlets and across the nation. Too many, Kennedy became a symbol of perseverance, a man who refused to bow to arrogance, who let his principles, not his pride, speak for him. That night, while others celebrated noisily, Kennedy walked quietly through the streets near his home. He thought of the people whose voices had carried him through the trial. He thought of the judge's harsh words and how close he had come to being broken by them. And then he thought of the victory, not his, but theirs. For, in the end, the story was not about a judge calling him ignorant. It was about what followed. It was about a nation reminded that integrity, honesty, and resilience are stronger than ridicule, and that justice, no matter how delayed, can still shine through. And as Kennedy looked up at the night sky, he whispered to himself, "Let them call me what they want. As long as I fight for what's right, I'll never be ignorant."